This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
What's up, Real Talkers? A good morning to you, or a good afternoon, a good evening for those of you that are giving us your valuable evening hours. In just a second, Dr. Heather Exner-Pirot and Max Fawcett on a few files. The Prime Minister has a busy day, a meeting day and a travel day. He'll be meeting with the coastal First Nations to talk about obviously, a potential new pipeline, but the issues stretch beyond that, and that's not necessarily the context of the meeting or the description in the Prime Minister's itinerary of the purpose of the meeting, but that's obviously the precursor. That's obviously what's hanging over whatever negotiations or whatever consultation may be happening. The Prime Minister's office says it will be discussing major projects and marine conservation with coastal First Nations leaders. So that's the deal there. Then the PM is off to China. It's the first diplomatic visit for Canada in this context, at least since 2017, almost 10 years now. And Mark Carney's got his work cut out for him. And then, of course, there's everything happening in Venezuela. There's been a lot of talk recently about what's happening on American soil in Minnesota in particular, but the Venezuela situation is a big deal. Don't forget about the Epstein files either. But what's the impact? This is where our experts will go today, Dr. Exner-Pirot and Max, on the impact on Canadian energy producers, Canadian jobs, markets, and implications for Canadian energy expansion. All of that to come in just a second. First off, if you're watching us on YouTube or in our live stream presented by California Closets, you see this bottle of Hansen whiskey on our table here. This is their Northern Eyes whiskey. This is the 5-year aged Northern Eyes whiskey. They've also got a 7-year aged one that we were pretty excited about. We were talking to you about that one. The first ever 7-year aged whiskey ever released from an Edmonton distillery. No surprise to see it released from our friends at Hansen, Edmonton's original distillery, rooted in prairie grit and a rebellious spirit. Hansen's known for authentic small batch whiskey, vodka, gin, moonshine, and those unique liqueurs that we were talking to you about through the holiday season. Oh my gosh, that mint chocolate liqueur didn't stand a chance, let me tell you. When our family got together over the holidays, Hansen just nailed that one. Well, it's crafted right here in the Metro Edmonton region with local Alberta ingredients, and every bottle tells a true story of passion, heritage, and hands-on craftsmanship. You can visit their distillery. I recommend you do. It's a super fun place. I love the Johnny Cash mural on the wall. 174th Street, 111th Ave in Edmonton. You can look for Hansen's latest creations in Alberta's liquor stores, wherever you buy your fine spirits. And of course, you can check them out online. Learn more about the Hansen story. Super cool family story here that started this thing off. HansenDistillery.com. In our feature interview today, presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, we'll check in with two different voices, bringing two different perspectives to conversation about Canadian energy and, of course, the politics behind it. Dr. Heather Exner-Pirot is a senior fellow and director of energy, natural resources, and environment at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute in Ottawa. She's a special advisor to the Business Council of Canada and a research advisor to the Indigenous Resource Network, along with her work as a global fellow at the Wilson Center in Washington, D.C. Max Fawcett, former editor of Alberta Oil Magazine, is now the lead columnist at Canada's National Observer. Thanks to the both of you for joining us. We always appreciate your time and your perspectives. Heather, the Prime Minister out meeting with leadership, coastal First Nations. This, of course, setting the table for his visit to China, but a lot of people are wondering what negotiations might look like and whether really the Prime Minister has any progress to gain here, considering the fact that the message from those First Nations on the West Coast has essentially been no new pipelines, not at all, at least not here. So what are you looking to see?
Well, to distinguish, coastal First Nations is a group of 9 nations. It's not a tribal council. and all those 9 nations will have their own opinion. And so I think this is a useful gathering, of important First Nations for the Prime Minister to meet. And obviously, at some point, you need a port. I think that's probably the heaviest lift, is to find territory to put a port on. And so one of those communities, if we have this pipeline, we'll have to accept that, I think. But anyway, so Coastal First Nations has said no pipeline. I think some of those 9 First Nations might have a bit of a more nuanced approach. And they request this meeting, as I understand. They want to have a face-to-face with the Prime Minister. So I think he's doing good due diligence to hear what they want to say. Minister Swaney, Alberta's Indigenous Affairs Minister, said on the record about a week ago that, it's 50-50 of which nations are in favor, which not. And only 2, though, that she's talked to have said absolutely not. So I think there's some room maybe to find, a way forward. And I just want to say, everyone knows about, the duty to consult and accommodate. The Canadian law also has a reciprocal duty. For First Nations to also act in good faith, to also come forward with solutions, to also look for ways to find compromise. And so I hope that there's some good faith around this table of everyone trying to figure out what is the impact on Aboriginal rights, what is your main issue, and is there a way that we can resolve this?
Max, what's your, I won't say your optimism level, because that would imply that, I'm imposing an ideal end result on you. Where's your head at? Let me ask it that objectively.
I would say I don't feel any more optimistic about the prospect of an additional pipeline to the North Coast than I did, 2 or 3 weeks ago. These things unfold over a much longer timescale than I think everyone in this conversation is comfortable with. The Prime Minister has said things need to move quickly. Certainly the Premier has. The oil and gas industry has said that. And that is just not how it works when it comes to these sorts of long multi-nation consultation processes. And I don't know how you can square that circle. So I'm sure the Prime Minister is looking for some daylight. Is there promises that can be made? Are there assurances? Is there changes that would allow these nations to support a potential North Coast pipeline? But I think all of this puts the cart way before the horse, which is that who's going to fill that pipeline with barrels of oil? We have a price environment right now that is not good for producers. We know from almost every available forecast, the next 2 years prices are expected to go down. There's a global supply glut, and now we have Venezuela potentially adding, millions maybe of barrels per day to the market in the 2030s. Who is going to be building oil sands facilities, greenfield oil sands facilities to fill this supposed new pipeline to the North Coast? The math doesn't math. And nobody has tried to show that the math works yet. So that's what I would like to see in all of this is someone actually putting the numbers together to explain where this additional 1 million barrels per day is going to come from and who is going to pay or who's going to sort of pay to produce those barrels.
Heather, what do you think?
Yeah, so on one respect, I agree with Max. It isn't urgent. This isn't, and I disagree with, for example, AF7, you need an approval 60 days after, July 1st when Alberta submits. Because we do have some egress coming up. We do have already, Trans Mountain has announced that they have plans to expand Trans Mountain by 360,000 barrels a day. The pipeline itself that they just built, TMX, is 590,000. So already within 2 years of it coming in service, they want to expand it by 60%. Well, that's probably about 2 years of growth for oil sands producers. Enbridge already announced last quarter that they plan to expand their main line going to the United States by 400,000 barrels over 2 phases. Again, these 2 projects are going to add almost 800,000 barrels between now and 2030. So there is room today to grow. There's room for oil sands producers to look at their costs, Clearwater, all those guys to say, where's the best place for us to grow? And I will say that does indicate some optimism that Enbridge and Trans Mountain both think there is a market for Canadian heavy oil, and they're putting money into expanding egress so we can get more out of it. By the time we need, this Northwest Coast oil pipeline that we're calling it, it will be 2030. And so I do think we do have time, even if Alberta, again, carried the water, for another year in terms of duty to consult and some front-end engineering, and wait till that price is ready. I think that makes sense. But I think I'm a little more optimistic than Max. I think probably the prices will turn around by 2027 at the latest.
Max, I want to give you a chance to respond, and then Heather, I want to circle back on the consultation schedule or the time frame there. But Max, what do you think about what Heather said?
Well, I appreciate Heather agreeing with my premise there, which is that, and this is one I've laid out in columns, which is that, we have this additional egress coming, like she laid out, of almost 1 million barrels per day. And all the forecasts that I've seen, whether you're looking at the Alberta Energy Regulator, whether you're looking at S&P Global, they do not forecast more than 700,000 barrels per day of additional production coming out of Alberta by 2035. So we have a pretty good match on additional egress and additional production growth. And so the real question is, do you think that there is going to be a need for additional production out to past 2035? I think that's the fundamental disagreement. I don't. I see what's happening in China. I see what's happening in the rest of the developing world in terms of electrification. I think that the demand story is going to be not a good one for oil producers. And then now you have this new source of potential supply, not just Venezuela, but also Iran, where the Trump administration is trying to broker a peace. They're trying to, I think, force those barrels back on the market. All of that, if that ramps up, starts to hit the market in the 2030s. So you have potentially declining demand, potentially increasing global supplies. I think the math there is pretty clear that there is not a great market for an additional 1 million barrels per day of Alberta production.
Heather, I wanted to circle back on one of Max's earlier premises, and I think that some people would probably agree. Many people would probably agree that expediting these sorts of major infrastructure projects across the country, which is a big part of Prime Minister Carney's plan. It's a big factor that Canadians will consider when evaluating his job performance. Like, it's important to him. He set up this major projects office in Calgary and the like. How do you maintain the standard of consultation that Canadians and the courts expect, and at the same time expedite timeframes? Like where can red tape be cut? Where is it possible to sort of go pedal to the metal, and what is inevitably, I don't want to say be a delay, but what will inevitably take the time that it takes?
Well, I mean, Trans Mountain TMX offers all the lessons on this. So we do know already that you can build pipelines in Canada and you don't need 100% consent from Indigenous nations. That was made very abundantly clear with TMX. But we do know that there is a standard that the courts require, deep consultation now, and there's just a court decision last week. You can't just send emails and letters. You have to meet in person. You have to discuss solutions, and obviously we've done that with both Coastal GasLink and Trans Mountain. It satisfied the courts, that level of consultation. So I think we do know what that consultation requires. And I will say again, it is clear that you don't need consent. And Prince Rupert Gas Transmission and Silesom's LNG are on that MPO list. They don't have unanimous consent from Indigenous nations in that region, but they've met a threshold that the law says is going to be adequate. So, but the things that that you could cut off the timeline and the costs from TMX, there were so many small challenges, legal delays. A migratory bird, hummingbird, not at all threatened, passing through. They had to shut down production for 4 months in construction season, and that is what, if you ask me, C5 Building Canada Act is tailor-made for, is to bypass the Migratory Birds Act or the Species at Risk Act if it seems like the cost benefit of hand moving anthills out of moving them 10 meters to the right does not seem like it's in the Canadian interest when we're trying to build this nation building project. So the consultation has to happen. You can do consultation in 2 years if you have enough boots on the ground. And if the First Nation stymies or frustrates that consultation, courts don't look well on that either. There has to, you have to be able to be consulted. And so I think there's lots of ways to make this easier. Going through Prince Rupert instead of Burnaby is going to make this easier. You don't have to go through Canada's third largest city and go through people's backyards. There's so many ways to make this a better process. And I think C5 already allows for some of those.
I'm saying this somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but if anybody missed our interview with author and former Fire Tower lookout Trina Moyles a week ago today on the 6th of January about her new book, Black Bear, she outlined how actually disturbing the earth for pipeline construction is wonderful news for bears looking to feed on fresh dandelions. I'm not suggesting that anybody's going to present that as evidence to the public.
Oh, I will now. I will now, Ryan.
Yeah, you can now. Well, check it out. January 6th. I don't know. Interesting stuff. Facts are facts. Can we all agree, Max? I'll go to you first, though. And Heather may be right. Heather is correct in talking about, you don't need, unanimous buy-in from First Nations, et cetera, to move these projects forward. But can we all agree that it would then require even more political will, even more political capital? And I guess the question, when you talk about, the revenue potential here and the impact that this could have on the Canadian economy, you've also got politicians that are going to be considering their own political futures and whether or not it's worth risking support in certain parts of the country, Max.
Yeah, I mean, Heather is completely correct about everything she said. I think the stuff about moving anthills and things like that is a really good point, because that was something that the opponents of TMX were really good at weaponizing. They really knew how to exploit the existing regulatory system to slow things down, and C5 can really help just blast right through that. So it can be done, but to Heather's point, doing Indigenous consultation properly, you have to be there physically, you have to be on the ground. It has to take 2 years is about right, and you have to show up. And any whiff of a government trying to rush things is going to get it's going to get every Indigenous community that get their back up justifiably. Those that would support it will oppose it because they will feel like they're getting, they've seen this movie before. And it really doesn't help when you have politicians like Danielle Smith and Pierre Poilievre out there saying you need to rubber stamp this in 3 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever it is, because that just shows a fundamental lack of understanding of how the process has to unfold. So, I think there is an opportunity for political consensus here. I think the government will risk some of its support in BC. I'm unconvinced that there are a lot of people who are going to die on that hill when push comes to shove. But I'm sure there's some very green voters who this would be a ballot issue for. I would suggest they've already lost those voters with the MOU. I think there's probably a lot more voters in BC that care about the economy, that care about jobs, and that care about independence, being able to control our own economic destiny. And I think there's an opportunity for rare political consensus, but you have to have people like Poilievre and Smith stop with the, putting their finger on the watch and saying, you got to get this done in 5 minutes, buddy.
In our live chat, powered by Park Power, Alberta Girl says, what's the risk for Mark Carney? Pierre Poilievre's already gone on record saying he would fast-track this project. It's as good as done. All that's left is the show of consultation and buying them off. Ms. Katie says Poilievre's already said he would consult, but it doesn't matter because he would just go ahead regardless. So why bother consulting if it's just performative? Matthew Yegg says, oh, come on, you guys, hand-moving anthills. How can we be so flippant about protecting life on this planet when it's the only habitable planet we'll ever reach within our lifetimes? Mark says, yeah, we can build pipelines. The evidence is TMX. So why are the two laws related to Bill C-69 inaccurately called the No More Pipelines Law? That in our live chat, powered by Park Power. If you're listening to this later, our interview with Dr. Heather Exner-Pirot, Max Fawcett, you can always send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. I'm showing it on my screen right now. Chris Severson-Baker, I'll come to you first on this, Heather. He's executive director of the Pembina Institute, has just made a statement following that letter that Premier Smith sent to Prime Minister Mark Carney. Says the executive director of the Pembina Institute, just over a month after that MOU, the Pipeline Memorandum of Understanding, was signed, Alberta has sought to recast the issues in light of the Americans' recent actions in Venezuela. The letter includes speculative suggestions about the possible impact on global oil markets, trade flows, Alberta's oil industry, and therefore on the trajectory of ongoing climate policy negotiations between Alberta and Ottawa. The statement continues, Alberta using this moment to lobby in public against what it is now calling an overly aggressive industrial carbon price raises more questions about the outcome that Alberta has in mind, especially given it already agreed to the MOU to strengthen its system. This, in addition to regulatory changes Alberta pushed through in December, days after signing the MOU, that weakened its industrial carbon pricing system and effectively moved the goalposts on the negotiation before it had begun. It goes on to talk and address the fact that nobody can predict how events in Venezuela will play out and the like. Heather, is Alberta risking something here by the approach that Danielle Smith is taking? Do you think it's a strong move on behalf of the Premier? What's your analysis?
So I feel like this was the initial Canadian reaction. And for the first time, Ryan, I observed that the average Canadian felt invested in the success of our oil sector. felt threatened that maybe our Canadian oil sector might be displaced, might be vulnerable, that we might lose 1 million barrels, and wanting to react. That wasn't an Alberta or a Conservative or a UCP reaction. To me, that was pretty broad spread. And I guess, litmus test for that is the Globe and Mail editorial board also saying, my God, we have to build this pipeline. You know what I mean? So I think kind of the business liberal, the central Canadian felt that same way. So I thought that was very positive. For me, Alberta was just picking up on that vibe to reiterate what they've already been saying for the last 10 years. Yes, we agree. We need optionality. Look, you have it already up.
Look at that. Hey, good team over here.
Good job, team. So we need this optionality. It's even today, this optionality of having a pipeline to the Pacific Coast is coming in handy, that we are looking to sell. We will be selling more oil to China. China's interest in replacing some of those Venezuelan heavy oil barrels with Canadian ones. Those discussions are happening. I expect that will be a big topic of discussion for Carney, and perhaps even an investment in a new oil pipeline, however that might look. So absolutely, I feel like this was just the zeitgeist that the average Canadian, again, and maybe in a different perspective after last year, realized why oil is important to Canada, why it's important geopolitically, and why we would want to have optionality on who our customer is. And Smith is just plugging into what was already there.
Max, give you a chance to respond before we talk Venezuela more specifically.
Yeah, I think if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and that sort of describes the Smith government's approach here. I agree with Heather. I think a lot of Canadians want to see us protected from the risk of the Americans, the risk of Trump, and the risk of having our industry, our oil and gas industry, compromised. I think what people object to, certainly what I think Chris Severson-Baker objects to, what I object to, is using it as an opportunity to once again push back against climate policy, right? To say, well, we certainly can't do the thing we just agreed to because of this completely unrelated event, right? That oh, well, gosh, now we can't do the thing we committed to. Like that is not on board. If you want Canadians across the country to really back the oil and gas industry, to possibly, support taxpayer dollars going to another government-owned pipeline, you have to hold up your end of the bargain. And that means $130 per ton effective carbon price in Alberta. That is the quid pro quo. And if Danielle Smith and Alberta are not willing to live up to their end of it, do not be surprised if Canadians aren't interested in living up to theirs.
Ryan, can I just quickly interject here? I mean, the world is a more volatile and dangerous place this month. It is. And to think that we can just continue on the same path that we've been in Canada, there's some navel gazing involved in, I think, that Pembina op-ed. We actually have to spend more on defense right now. And we need more revenues to spend on defense. And we need more allies, and we need to bolster relationships with other parties around the world. And oil is a great way to do that. So to think that nothing has changed and we need to do, we need to have the same carbon price that we discussed, 2 months ago or 2 years ago, and that there's no reason to adapt or to rethink things. I think, and that you are facing more competition, and that whether we maintain our flows to the United States will be based on whether we are in the same dollar range as Venezuelan oil, and to say none of that matters, I think that's, again, navel gazing. Yes, it does matter.
Max?
Sure. I mean, if we want to spend more on defense, let's raise taxes and pay for it through that means. The answer is not always get rid of climate policy at the first available opportunity. And part of the design of the policy here is to protect the oil and gas industry, to make it competitive in the future. So talking about the 2030s, the 2040s, when Donald Trump will be gone, the world that he's trying to create will be gone. Europe continues to be interested in carbon border adjustments. We will probably see that continue to spread in other parts of the world. And so the long-term competitiveness of this industry depends at some point on it being able to live up to its promise to reach net zero by 2050. 2050 keeps getting closer. We can't just keep inventing excuses for why we can't do it.
I want to hear sometimes on this job, on my job, like when I'm, for these 90 enlightening minutes every single day, I represent the every person. And I think I do it well because I very rarely have an intimate understanding of any of the industries that we're discussing. That's why we bring on experts like you two. So here's what I think what the average person knows about what's happening in Venezuela, right? Like nobody thinks Maduro was a good guy. Everybody agrees that there's, uncertainty that needs to be addressed here. Nobody really knows what political leadership will look like in the country moving forward. There are obviously big energy implications. There's obviously oil implications, and that will impact Canada, of course, as well. We understand that Exxon doesn't appear to believe that it's profitable, at least at this point, drawing the ire of the president. There's different commentary on how long it will take to increase exports or get oil production in Venezuela, on demand, so to speak. So, what does the average person, Max, we'll start with you, need to understand about this story, in particular, the impact of all of this on Canada?
Oh, okay, that's a tough question. I think they first have to understand that, to Heather's point earlier, this is not something that's going to impact us tomorrow. This is not a wave of oil that is going to be unleashed in the next 6 months. Venezuela is a very dangerous, unsafe country. The reserves there are not particularly attractive economically. There are far better places around the world to invest in to get returns. And so maybe the Trump administration can force the oil and gas companies to go in there and restore production. That remains to be seen. But I think it speaks to sort of the instability that is out there in the oil and gas market longer term, that we can have this sort of development and all of a sudden there's potentially 2 million barrels per day of extra production coming online in the next decade. I would encourage people to focus on the demand side of the story as well, the supply side, and how is Alberta going to fit into that evolving market. This is not Iraq in the early 2000s where you saw oil prices spike as a result of it. This is a new reality, one that continues to unfold with each passing day. And I would love it if our governments in Ottawa and in Edmonton would help us have that conversation about how does Alberta fit into the world in 2040, 2050, and what does that mean for our long-term prosperity? And there will be disagreement about that, but that's the conversation we need to be having.
Heather, how do you approach it?
For me, it's just a reminder, everyone, we have to be competitive. The oil industry is always politically refraught. It's always volatile. There's always going to be a war or disruption or a new discovery, that challenges our competitiveness. Whatever it's going to be in the next 5 or 10 years, the Canadian barrel has to be competitive. And the resource is phenomenal. We've been blessed with a tremendous resource. We have a pretty good, I would say very good private sector. They produce a reliable, high quality barrel that their customers can rely on. And that's a tremendous advantage right now. So again, with the idea that we can just layer on all these other things that increase costs and that won't have an effect on how, our position, our market share in global markets, that's the part where I feel like, there are trade-offs. You want to have an $130 industrial carbon price? There will be a trade-off. We will have less investment, we will produce less oil, and we have a smaller market share. And you may say right now there are benefits to having a lower cost barrel, and there are benefits to having a higher market share with a variety of countries. I think there are geopolitically, and that maybe you want to consider that in the equation. And so and this isn't just oil, this is every commodity. And a commodity by definition is just fungible, that you don't care if you get it from Chile or from Guyana or from Iran or from Canada. It's the same to you. The product is the same. So you only buy it based on price. And so for every commodity, we want the Canadian commodity to be extremely competitive and to use our reliability as a way to gain market share right now. And I think you might start to get a premium for reliability. I don't know that you're going to get a premium for sustainability. But at any rate, a reminder, we need to be competitive, and when we do things domestically, to look at it through that lens.
Heather, you have an important meeting starting in 60 seconds, so let me ask you quickly. Max is going to stick around, but what's one thing you're keeping an eye on when it comes to Carney's mission to China?
Well, so it's already been floated today in Bloomberg that it looks like the canola is on the table in exchange for EVs. Scott Moe, as I understand, is going on this trip, so he wouldn't be going there if there wasn't a canola deal coming. So I think that's very interesting. From Saskatchewan, so I'm happy, for those farmers that might have a better access to canola. But obviously, it's very tricky needle thread that he has to thread. And there's a, kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, in some respects with China. But I have to say it, I think Carney is well positioned to be that face. He's familiar with China. And so, but yeah, I think, any patriotic Canadian this week is wanting to be able to diversify our trade.
Heather, thanks for making time for us. We always appreciate chatting with you.
Thanks so much, guys.
Yeah, you got it. That's Dr. Heather Exner-Pirot, Senior Fellow Director of Energy, Natural Resources, and Environment at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute in Ottawa, also a research advisor to the Indigenous Resource Network. Max is going to stick around. Max Fawcett, lead columnist at Canada's National Observer. Heather teed us up there. Canola for EVs on the table. Interesting. What impact would, this tariff, it's a 100% tariff that Canada currently has on Chinese EVs. Doug Ford kind of sounding the alarm there. Depending on the headline you were reading a few days ago, he was either asking Carney or demanding that Carney not touch that, looking out for Ontario's auto sector. Curious for your take on that as well, Real Talkers. Plus, we'll get into Max's column, nationalobserver.com, about Twitter. We talked about Grok with Supriya Dwivedi. It's been something that everyone's been paying attention to since these Grok, these AI-generated sexualized images, oftentimes depicting children, depicting the shooting victim, Renee Nicole Good in Minneapolis, if you can believe it. I know, actually, tragically, that most of you will believe it just because of the way that things seem to be right now and the cesspool that Twitter can be. But Max has a take on it. Anyway, he's calling on Canada's politicians to leave the platform en masse. Plus, we'll get to an interesting email from a Real Talker. Marcus writes in. Marcus, a PEng, a professional engineer, works in the industry, has a take on Algoma steel layoffs and coal mining implications. How do I not put that in front of Max as well? Conversations here on Real Talk are happening with the support of the Citadel Theatre. We want to encourage you to check out citadeltheatre.com. That's where you can check out the 2026 season coming up starting January 24th, running through till February 15th. Valentine's Day date, anybody? Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman is a poignant story of a traveling salesman grappling with unfulfilled dreams and strained family bonds. This timeless drama explores ambition, identity, and of course the pursuit of success, revealing the fragility of the human spirit and the yearning for validation. This is a legendary production. Of course, we don't have to tell you this is a timeless classic that has shaped generations. Tickets are on sale right now at citadeltheatre.com. This is the perfect time if you're looking to go green, go solar, to reach out to the team at Kubi. You know, there's this common misconception that solar is not producing a lot of power in the winter, but the truth might surprise you. Even with shorter days, your solar system is still generating energy. And cold temperatures can actually help panels perform more efficiently. You can learn more at kubi.ca/solar. Plus, thanks to net billing in Alberta, plus for our BC audience members, self-generation, you can bank excess power generated during the sunny summer months. Use those credits to offset your energy use in the winter. If you want to learn more about how solar performs in Canada's colder months, check out the blog post, Solar Panels in Winter, at kubi.ca. Our friends at the Helm Clothing reminding you that right now they've got further markdown savings up to 60% off their wonderfully curated collection. You can check it out today at thehelmclothing.com. This is where we go when we're looking for luxury casual wear or custom suits. If you absolutely must look your best, I recommend you check in with the team at The Helm Clothing, online all the time at thehelmclothing.com, plus a beautiful 3-story retail experience in downtown Edmonton. Sometimes I go in there just to see what they have displayed. Don't forget the promo code REALTALK, all one word, takes 10% off your order at thehelmclothing.com. Real Talk, all one word, for 10% off at thehelmclothing.com. So you've picked up your luxury casual wear, maybe a new pair of Page denim jeans, and you're looking for somewhere to hang them. You're looking to get organized in 2026. That's where California Closets of Canada comes in. Proudly Canadian owned and operating. And as a matter of fact, manufacturing everything they install right here in our home province of Alberta. It's guaranteed for life. They stand behind that guarantee. And if you're thinking, gosh, I would love a California Closets walk-in closet or a dream laundry room or maybe even a custom garage, but I just don't think I can afford it, think again. They can custom design to your budget. You can check out the different levels of design, starting with practical simplicity, working all the way up to luxury refined. Book your free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. Max Fawcett sticking around on this episode of the show in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Max, kind of an interesting scene setter, if you will. Heather Exner-Pirot setting the table for us there to talk about Carney's mission to China. It's a big one. First time in 8 years. I was surprised to read that a Canadian Prime Minister's embarked on a mission like this one. And obviously a lot of factors to consider, including foreign interference and all of the reasons why there's been tension over the past number of years. We'll note it's a new Prime Minister. And so, looking to establish his own relationship. Canola for EVs on the table. What's at stake here, and what do you expect to see happen?
Yeah, it's an interesting opportunity for a reset of this relationship, which obviously has kind of gone off the rails over the last decade. China's never an easy partner to dance with. They have a lot of problems. Democratic problems, free speech problems, we've seen that obviously with the imprisonment of 2 Canadians there, but we do not have the luxury of not engaging with them right now. We do not live in a world where our biggest trading partner is our friend, has our back, wants what's best for us. I think there was a possibility that Canada, United States, Europe could kind of square up together against China on a bunch of key economic issues. That's not happening, and it's not going to happen, and I think the ship has kind of sailed on that already. And so we have to make the best deal that we can with China, one that advances our economic interests, helps insulate us a little bit from the Americans, but doesn't put us too deeply entangled with China, because there are obviously repercussions there as well. So, this is textbook diplomacy. Diplomacy is not doing a trade deal with Britain, or doing a trade deal with Australia. It's doing a trade deal with a country that is challenging. And there are opportunities here. I think canola for EVs would be amazing, not just for the farmers in Western Canada who've really borne the brunt of the tariff on their canola exports, but on Canadians who would love to get an electric car that is affordable and maybe they're traveling to Europe, maybe they're traveling to Australia, they get into an Uber or something, and they're in a Chinese EV, and they go, well, why can't we get these in Canada? These are amazing. This deal would unlock that, and I hope that the Carney government is working with the Chinese automakers to do something that is similar to what the Japanese and the Americans did in the 80s, which is agree to let more of their cars into our market in exchange for them setting up factories here, building them here, assembling them here, creating jobs here in Ontario. I think there are a few facilities in that province that are underutilized right now, and workers who are probably underutilized. It would be great if they could be put to service, building this next generation of vehicle, which would help Canadians, jump on board in an even greater way, this trend that is not going to go away. Even with what is happening in the United States with Trump, the American automakers have backed off a little bit on their EV promises, but they've all said that this is where it's going to end up. They've all said that this is an existential challenge. They have to compete with these Chinese EVs. So they can only press pause on this for so long, and maybe having Chinese EV makers assembling cars in North America will give them the kick in the butt they need, just like it did in the 80s with the Japanese and Korean automakers.
Yeah, I understand, and I want to read some polling numbers here in just a second. There's some interesting data out there on how Canadians feel about this. I understand the need to protect Canadian jobs and look to kickstart, economic opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. But, you also, and I do think but is fair here, you also look to consumer choice and consumer options and affordability and yada, 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 right? A majority of Canadians in a Nanos research poll, this is back, I'm looking back, I'm going to reference a couple, these polls between 2024 2025. Okay, I'll reference 2 or 3 of them. 62% of Canadians in this Nanos research poll and 80% of Canadians in an Abacus poll for Clean Energy Canada support either removing or lowering the current 100% tariff on Chinese EVs, most often citing affordability and increasing consumer choice. Now, not surprisingly, there's also concern for the domestic auto industry. This is a Polera survey, and it's a survey of Canadians living near auto plants. Okay, so I think that's worth disclosing, but still found that actually you may argue that the number's low if it's just Canadians living near auto plants, but 51% support keeping the tariffs, so 1 and 2, to protect Canadian jobs. Clean Energy Canada, in that Abacus poll I referenced, found that 53%, so half, prefer a lower tariff that balances protection for Canada's auto industry with improving affordability for consumers. And while I recognize I'm throwing a bunch of numbers at an audience listening to a podcast, if you're like me, the numbers are swimming around in your brain right now, but this is also relevant, I think. An Angus Reid poll also shows that across the country, support for cutting EV tariffs increases if it would help secure a better deal for Canadian canola producers. So, relevant facts. I wouldn't say that there's like overwhelming. There is that 80% one, that Abacus poll, that shows that Canadians would support lowering the tariff. But, public opinion, I guess mixed on this, but more in favor of lowering those tariffs.
Yeah, I think politically this is a win for the government, provided they shore up support near auto plants in Ontario. And I agree. I think that number is actually kind of low.
Yeah.
I think people probably intuitively understand that there's not a lot that the Canadian government can do to protect the auto industry when the American government is systematically trying to basically destroy it in Canada and bring all that production to the United States. And maybe there's a quid pro quo there with Trump over the trade deal where we say, look, you can pull a bunch of that production back to the United States if you let us replace it with Chinese EV manufacturing in those facilities. And maybe there's a kind of elegant trade-off there where we can replace one foreign partner with another foreign partner, because the auto pact that had been in place for longer than both you and I have been alive is effectively dead, right? There is no longer the spirit of competition or spirit of cooperation, excuse me, between Canada and the US, where cars go back and forth across the border 26 times before they're built. Like, that is being unwound, that is being disentangled by the Trump administration, and we have to respond to that. Or they're just going to completely suck it across the border, and we're going to be left with nothing.
Hey, we talked to Supriya Dwivedi, who was, a senior advisor to Prime Minister Trudeau on things like, social media and threats and harms and digital risks. And I mean, she describes it. People can check out that most recent episode of the show to hear her take on what's going on with Twitter and more, X as it's now known, and Grok, its AI engine, in particular for people that haven't heard the story. And maybe you can dig into deeper detail if you see it necessary. We're talking about your column at nationalobserver.com. Twitter is a litmus test for Canada. The assertion here, and I think that it's become more debated in public here, at least more discussed, as federal conservatives has suggested that Canada is looking at banning X in Canada. Minister Solomon, Canada's AI minister, has since tweeted, ironically, I guess, that Canada is not looking at banning X, but people around the world are, of course, aghast and very concerned that AI generator, Grok, has been used to generate sexualized images, including images of children and other people without their consent, obviously. Take us into where your head's at on this story.
Yeah, I'm conflicted here, because obviously I was on Twitter for a long time. I enjoyed it. I left pretty recently. There's no, what's the saying? There is no purity like a recent convert. So I really feel strongly that people should get off the platform now. That includes you, my friend.
I was waiting for that.
I was there for the longest time thinking, well, if I just, I bring facts to people, I'll do these nifty little threads, I can change some minds. It's not happening. The Elon Musk runs it in a way with the algorithmic amplification and suppression where it just exists to amplify one perspective. And you can argue that was the reverse before. It wasn't, but you can argue that. I just don't care. I'm not interested in that. I don't want to be there. And I don't think the federal government should get into the business of banning it. Strictly because that would probably irritate the president, and who knows what he would do in response. It's just not necessary, I don't think, to pick that fight with this administration. But every federal MP, and especially government ministers and the prime minister, can just stop posting. They just stop posting. They don't announce anything. They don't say, I'm quitting Twitter because I'm a very good and moral person. They just go somewhere else. You have that right. It's like a bar that suddenly starts letting in Nazis. You don't have to fight the Nazis. You just have to leave. Senator Paul Simons has been very eloquent on this in recent days. She was on As It Happens recently making this case. She's convinced, I think, some of her Senate colleagues to leave. and the thing is, the people like Evan Solomon, people like Mark Carney starting to post elsewhere will give other people permission structures to start posting elsewhere. It will create, I think, an incentive to just go to a bar that doesn't have a bunch of Nazis in it. And I understand the reticence here. Especially if you've built up a big following, a big platform. But it's not the same place it was 2 years ago. It's certainly not the same place it was 5 years ago. And this stuff with the AI image generator, if that's not enough, if that's not the tipping point, what is? What does this site have to do to get you to leave?
I've seen some comments popping up. We've got a couple of emails today of people, and I think I'm just looking at Tom Morello's post about it, right? Rage Against the Machine says, Christine, the Nazi slogan on a podium today. Did you hear this? One of ours, all of yours. Did you see this? It's World War II. An SS officer was killed, apparently. Nazis retaliated. I got to level up my understanding of history on this specific front. The slogan that was invoked, one of ours, all of yours, which led to more than 170 people being shot on the spot in Prague. 200 women deported to a concentration camp, Ravensbrück, where many died, children separated from their mothers, yada, yada. I mean, I retract yada, yada. That was disrespectful. I do not. I'd retract that from the record. The buildings dynamited, the village burned, the area bulldozed to literally erase it from the map, writes Tom Morello. It's interesting because where the sort of like the degradation of public discourse, and we've long lamented it on this show. Some would argue that we've contributed to it. I don't know, but we sort of have in some circumstances or in several circumstances pushed back on people invoking, I just noticed as I'm talking to you, a guy just tweeted me that says, commie says what? Like apparently now I'm a communist, but fascist and Nazi, and the words are thrown around. And on several circumstances through the past number of years, I've said, hey guys, like it's disrespectful to, 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust to refer to everybody who thinks right of you as a Nazi. And then you see something like one of ours, all of yours invoked from a podium by the Secretary of, of Homeland Security. And you kind of go, what the hell is going on right now?
Yeah. And I mean, Musk has been repeatedly retweeting just flagrant white nationalism, right? Just that, we need more white people. White people are in danger. It is not a healthy place to have a political conversation. And so, to anyone who has a large following, who is an elected official, I would just encourage them to ask themselves, not what will you lose by leaving, but what will you gain, right? Not being called names to the same extent, not having to see horrible things on what is supposed to be, a social media site. I have found in the months since I've been off, I have gained a lot just in terms of peace of mind, really. I have fewer followers. Who cares?
Yeah, but hang on a second though. Like real talk, Max. Like you and I are in the same business of like your publishers or your those that oversee your work at nationalobserver.com. They want to see more clicks on your op-eds, not fewer. We want to see, our sponsors of our show want to see more downloads, not fewer. Just like I'll talk real to you and to this audience because it's obvious. If I look and see like 50,000 people following us on Twitter, that in theory is an opportunity to present our episodes and our highlights to 50,000 people. Would you rather have that audience or not have that audience? It's a no-brainer. If it comes down to the point where people are looking at this and saying like, if you use the kind of Marshall McLuhan school of thought, right? The medium is the message. Like if, proud Edmonton grad, by the way, but if you use this platform, you endorse the views that are prevalent on the platform or the perspectives of the CEO or what have you, then maybe it becomes more complicated. I don't know if the average person thinks that. Do you look at people that use Twitter and suggest that they're endorsing everything that's said on Twitter? I don't think so.
No, but I think with each passing horror, it gets closer to that point. I use that line in my column. The medium is the message right now with using Twitter, and I'll give you my experience from leaving. We saw a dip in traffic for my columns. But it has started to tick up, especially as I've been posting in other places. There's no shortage of other places right now. And, when we look at those follower accounts, how many of those followers are real people? We don't know.
Who knows?
Because Twitter is absolutely marbled with bots and influence farming operations. And so, my 27,000 on Blue Sky is probably far more authentic, let's put it that way, than my 60 whatever thousand on Twitter. And yeah, there's maybe a short-term dip in traffic, but at what cost, right? To stay on there. That was the thing that pushed me off, and I had no regrets, let's put it that way, about not being there.
Super chat Ken, $5 into the super chat. Thanks, Ken. We appreciate you. Says a tip of the hat to Max. He always brings great opinions and knowledge. I appreciate the no BS algorithm of this show. That from super chat Ken. Thanks, buddy. Cherie says, I agree with Max. Leaving the cesspool of X was good for my stress levels and my mental health. Dubious says, if you use the platform, you literally says you literally make a Nazi more money to take over the world, bro. And Bustion says, Jespo, you should test not posting highlights to X for a week and see if it has an impact on overall downloads. Interesting theory. Nathaniel says that you are, or he's maybe saying it about me. Yeah, he must be saying it about me. This guy is so content brained, he can't understand why people don't want to associate with Nazis. See, I think that's probably either smoke screening what I'm saying or like misunderstanding what I'm saying. Number one, listen, because the funny part about this, Max, is now in this debate or this conversation, now I'm going to come across as the guy that's like going to the wall for Twitter and defending Twitter. I'm just questioning the move of like, shuttering the doors and putting plywood over the windows and closing up shop. Like it's a business decision. And I've read your column again. Nationalobserver.com is where people can check it out. It's very well written. And there's a ton of people in our live chat that are talking about how they walked away from Twitter and walked away from their accounts. And I respect and understand why people would do that. So, I don't, to Nathaniel, I don't misunderstand it, or it's not I can't understand it. Gilles says, not seeing what's happening on X. He's quoting George Orwell again, as so many people have. In the context of the president, vice president, and Kristi Noem's interpretation of that video, the ICE killing in Minnesota. Matthew says this is not the first time this administration has used Nazi propaganda. ICE ads, for example, are using images of knights. Knights with a K. Says just like the Germans did. Metamodern says, yeah, that slogan, Jespo, you referenced was the framework under which the concept of collective punishment, like a war crime, was justified. Says it's beyond doubt what the Trump administration is all about. Christine wonders if people who throw around the term commie even understand the definition. She says, my guess is many don't. She says, I, by the way, for what it's worth, am phasing over to Blue Sky. Norman says the secret to X is lists. You got to pick the followers you like. Says I haven't really, to be honest, seen any of the other stuff. Ken says, frankly, to get government or municipal communications, you shouldn't have to give up your privacy to a private company like Twitter or Facebook. That's a good point as well, right? Like you got to, I understand that these social media platforms can be an effective communication tool for government messaging, but they can't be exclusive to those platforms.
Yeah, I mean, I want to give you some grace here and give other journalists some grace, people in content creation, content brain people. I think we have it probably harder than anyone in terms of making the call here. Because we do rely on clicks and impressions for our livelihood.
Yep.
I wish it was the old way. I wish it was, I could write for a newspaper and people would have a subscription and that would be that. But this is the world we live in, and we got to swim the waters we're in. But if you're in government, you do not have to play this game, right? You do not have to play the click game. There are a lot of ways for you to get your message out, your information out. If you're the government, you can still have a Government of Canada website, Twitter account, and just put out information for the public. But as a personal, as a cabinet minister, as Evan Solomon, you do not need to be there. And it's not just liberals. I don't want to pick on liberals. Avi Lewis, who's running to be the leader of the NDP, keeps posting on Twitter. You would think that he would be wary of, sort of corporate oligarchs and all the terrible things on Twitter. Of course, you have all these conservatives who are on Twitter, and you would think that they would be a little more concerned about child pornography and this sort of gutter kind of content that is constantly on Twitter. They seem very comfortable there for some reason. So I just think
but people that are going to defend remaining on the site are people that are not even going to consider leaving the site. There's a lot of folks that won't defend it because they don't give a shit about people that say they should leave. They're not going to waste their time defending it. They'll say X has responded to this. They've said that they're cracking down. They're working with local law enforcement. It's a criminal, offense that'll be properly prosecuted per jurisdiction and yada yada. Right? They'll say that. They'll say it's not permitted on the site. The AI tool has been used or weaponized for this type of crime, but they'll say it's been addressed.
X has also made it so that the image modification tools are now only available to paid users.
Saw that.
Which means they're literally in the business of producing this content. So, if they're comfortable with that, that's a choice they can make. It's a choice I think we all have to make and live with. But I would just encourage those who are willing to kind of give this a bit of sober second thought to really think about whether this is the place you want to be spending your time.
Hey, do you have a few minutes to hang out with us? Or do you have a relatively casual morning at this point anyway? Because we've got a couple of things. Marcus wrote in PNG on steel and coal, and I want to put it in front of you. It's interesting. I don't know what the hell he's talking about, but he sounds smart. And then I also wanted to, I don't know if did you see this? This is a few days old now, but I didn't see it till yesterday. Philadelphia Sheriff Rochelle Bilal, did you see this when she called out? She said, essentially saying that her sheriffs or her police officers in Philadelphia are going to arrest ICE agents, and says, you don't want this smoke. And now, I mean, there's nothing funny about the big picture, but I just love, I want to play the full 3 minutes because she is just, I would never fuck with this lady. And anyway, the ICE boss has spoken out now, clap back. And I'll just get your take on that. It's, I don't want to say it's entertaining. It's very interesting in a very tenuous, stressful, high stakes situation across the United States right now. We're talking to Max Fawcett, who's lead columnist at Canada's National Observer. Friends, it is Tuesday, and every Tuesday we're working with our friends at the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation to shine a light on the incredible work that they have been doing over the past 125 years, a century and a quarter of legacy at the Royal Alex, as they call it. And in Echoes of the Alex, we present the stories that have defined this legacy of care. Really, really remarkable stuff. Before we get to today's official story, I wanted to read a quick note from Sarah. Sarah wrote into the show and with her own story, her Royal Alex memories. She says, Ryan, my family has a long history with the Alex. My mom lived with chronic health issues, she says, and the nurses, the doctors at the Alex brought her back from the brink of death a few times. Once she was in a coma for 9 days. And when those nurses and doctors in the ICU were at work, you could just see how comforting they were, the great care that they took. My mom, of course, when she finally woke up, the doctors and nurses celebrated with us, and a couple of them even shed tears at what felt like a miracle. Sarah says, I also almost died during the birth of my first child. Everything was going wrong, and he became stuck, and my body essentially started to shut down. And through the quick thinking of a very special nurse and one hell of a skilled OBGYN, both of us survived and bounced right back. Sarah says, I've walked with friends and family through those doors to survive and heal and grieve and find comfort in small moments with complete strangers trying their best to help us. And I will forever be grateful to the staff that work there. How amazing is that? That's Sarah's Echo of the Alex. To talk at ryanjesperson.com. Today, we want to share with you a story of action, compassionate care, and a family that was kept whole when it mattered the most. It was Labor Day about 20 years ago, 2004 it was. Just an ordinary evening for Frances until it wasn't. Upstairs, her husband Roy was pacing, unsettled. I mean, just wasn't himself. Instinct told her, Frances, that something was wrong. And a 911 call confirmed her fear that Roy was having a heart attack. Within minutes, they were racing toward the Royal Alex. When they arrived, something unforgettable happened. A young doctor in cowboy boots. Another staff member looked like he'd just come from the golf course. One by one, the team had returned to the hospital after hours without hesitation because Roy needed them. For 5 long days, the ICU team watched over him with extraordinary skill and a kind of compassion that Frances says she can still feel 2 decades later. Their presence, their reassurance, their determination. Thrilled to let you know that Roy recovered, and that moment changed the course of their lives. And for more than 20 years now, Frances and Roy have supported the Royal Alex because they know personally what exceptional care can mean. Their journey with the hospital continued through the Eye Institute of Alberta, the Lois Hole Hospital for Women, and the C.K. Huey Heart Center. The Alex has been there for their family again and again. And Frances says what sets this hospital apart isn't just what it does, it's how it does it. Care that treats the whole person. Care that stays with you long after you leave. And she shares one simple message: we are truly grateful. This is Echoes of the Alex on Real Talk. If you'd like to help ensure that care like this continues for every family walking through these doors, you can support the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation. Check out givetoroyalalex.org to give or to honor someone special with a gift that carries meaning forward. Because care like this touches every family, and together we can help carry it forward. Again, that's givetoroyalalex.org. And you can submit your Echo of the Alex to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Proudly presented by the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation here on Real Talk. Max Fawcett, our guest, lead columnist at Canada's National Observer and a longtime energy commentator, political columnist, read across the country. Got this email from Marcus to talk@ryanjesperson.com. He's a PEng and provides appropriate evidence and proof in his email. We always appreciate that from folks. He said, I wanted to raise an item to your attention, to Real Talk's attention, about a news story related to coal mining on the Eastern Slope. Says recently Algoma Steel laid off 1,000 employees, about 30% of their staff, at their foundry in the Sault Ste. Marie. Says the reason stated for the layoffs is they're accelerating their transition from the older form of steelmaking using coked coal blast furnaces to the new technology, electric arc furnaces. Says this is the general trend across the world as steel mills switch from blast furnaces to electric arc furnaces to reduce the carbon footprint of that steelmaking process and allow for more recycling of old steel. As more foundries across the world make this transition, the demand for metallurgical coal is going to drop off. He says, now, steel making is not my area of expertise. I'm a downstream user, but my understanding is that Algoma's foundry was the last coke-fired blast furnace for steel production in the country. Says it'd be interesting to learn more about this. Like, what happens to the Eastern Slope mines, coal mines, when the demand for coal for steel making drops off? Arc furnaces have many advantages beyond being greener. They allow for more use of scrap steel. They provide more consistent steel quality, which reduces rework requirements. It's likely that blast furnaces will continue to run in some parts of the world. They're generally cheaper to build and maintain. But as I understand it, blast furnaces are still required for production of new steel from iron ore. Says I could be wrong on that. He says another interesting wrinkle would be that petroleum coke, a byproduct in the upgrading of bitumen, can be used as a replacement for at least a portion of the metallurgical coal in steelmaking. There's mountains, he says, of petroleum coke up in the oil sands facilities with upgraders north of Fort McMurray, as well as in Lloyd and in your neck of the woods in Edmonton. Your thoughts?
I mean, I love how he pretends like he doesn't know more about this than we both do. He's very well read and very, I think, intelligent on this subject. I think these are the sorts of questions that we need to be grappling with as a province and as a country. What is the world going to look like as it continues to electrify, as it continues to decarbonize, and where are the opportunities for us in that? We cannot stop this process. Donald Trump cannot stop the process. Nobody can, really, because the path of travel is going to be to cheaper, more plentiful sources of energy, and electricity in the developing world, in increasingly pretty much everywhere in the world, is going to be cheaper than fossil fuels. And so we have to adapt to that. We have to reckon with what that means for not just our oil and gas industry, not just the people who work in it, but the people who could be working in these new industries, in these new sectors. And, whether it's mining in Canada for critical minerals, copper, iron, whatever it might be, there are opportunities in this transition, big ones. But as long as the public is focused, and as long as politicians keep the public focused on, Ottawa's blocking our pipelines, or it's that Trudeau guy's fault. We're not going to be able to have the conversations we need to have about how do we maximize our stake, our piece of this growing clean economy. And Alberta's like practically ideally positioned, maybe more so than BC and Ontario. But we need leadership, and right now we don't have it.
Unrelated, I just saw Amber Mack had just joined as a subscriber here on our YouTube channel. Amazing. Amber, a longtime commentator on tech trends and digital media and streaming, and I would imagine we got to get Amber. Great to see you. We got to get you back on the show. I got to get Amber on to talk about Grok and Twitter, and she'd have a great take on that. So awesome to see you there, Amber. Thanks very much. Renee kicks in $7 into the super chat and announces, I have just removed myself from X. So there you have it, Max. Elon's empire has decreased by one follower or one user of the platform due to your advocacy from Renee. And I would say the trend in our live chat has been more in favor of leaving the platform, or even more so, people who have left the platform. Johnny Infamous, technical director of this show. You've got, I would say when I look at your social engagement, do you tweet? You're on Instagram all the time. You're big time on Instagram.
Yeah.
Do you still have your X account?
I do, but it's kind of just it's dusty. It's old.
Yeah.
It's in the
you
back.
don't use it as much.
It's like in the back of the closet with the social media apps I don't use as much, like WhatsApp and Telegram and all these ones that I've signed up for, but don't go on. And it's, I'm not here to for me, it has nothing to do with Elon or nothing to do with, you can put all that aside. I mean, it does, but let's put all that aside.
Yeah.
It's when I go on an app, how do I feel? And when I go on X, I'm just like, I'm angry. I'm upset. I see exactly what Max is talking about, like amplified voices that, false information in multitudes. Like it used to be somewhere I would open every day before my email. I would be like, here's where I can get news, weather, politics, everything in like 5 minutes. And now I maybe I open it once every 2 weeks. That's it.
Is that right?
Or if I get a notification, like I still have it on my home screen. So I see like if someone DMs me, I'll check it. If somebody ats me, I'll check it. But other than that, I mean, once every 2 weeks, I'll open the thing.
Interesting to see Amber Mack. I'll shout her out, by the way. Check out ambermack.com. You can see here her featured posts on her website, including the Amber Mack Show. Again, that's ambermack.com. And you can listen to her show. I think it's on, it's on Sirius XM, right? We got to get Amber back on the show. But she says in our YouTube live chat, powered by Park Power, says individual actions don't have power to change how these platforms work. You can decide not to use X, but as Cory Doctorow says, we need systemic change, like enforcing laws and fining tech companies. And I do see here, Johnny, let's show her site, ambermack.com. It looks like she has done a show on this, her episode 47, which was posted January 5th. So you can check that out, the Amber Mack Show. I'm going to reach out to Amber today. We'll get her back on the show. But she's not wrong, Max, in that as well, right? Like this, people are saying, like Minister Solomon may say, we're not looking to ban X, but, we can all acknowledge that the need for existing laws on this and lawmakers able to keep up with big tech and ensure that laws are relevant and fitting and enforceable is both necessary and also not always the case.
Yeah, 100%. And I love her shout out of Cory Doctorow. I mentioned him in my column. He wrote a piece recently basically arguing that for the first time that he can remember in a long time, the door is open just a crack to creating a tech landscape that isn't completely dominated by these American tech companies, where we don't have to surrender our data to them, where governments aren't beholden to them. And that would be where I would suggest that the federal government put its focus, not in banning Twitter, but in building the proper legal and enforcement infrastructure so that, when they do things that are bad, they can be enforced, but also so that we can encourage the repatriation of tech talent, the creation of digital sovereignty. Maybe we create our own. I know there's Gander, which is a Canadian social media app, but we create our own tech infrastructure rather than relying on these American companies who have shown time and time and time again that they're not particularly interested in what's best for us as Canadians. I think maybe it was easy before Trump 2.0 to kind of convince ourselves that what was in the American interest was in the Canadian interest. That is obviously not the case. And so we need to be exploring ways that we can increase our digital sovereignty, not just building data centers, but building the landscape where we can have our own companies, our own data secured here, and our own standards being enforced. And that's not easy. That's not something you can do overnight. But I do hope that that is what Evan Solomon is focused on.
I love seeing new friendships and new connections happen in our live chat powered by Park Power with all of the sludge and all of the gutter sort of trend around online interactions, to see people connecting with Amber Mack connecting with people, learning more about her show on Sirius XM in our live chat. Max fills my heart. This has filled my bucket today. She's let us know again at ambermack.com. That's where you can listen to her episodes. If you don't have Sirius XM, she's got a new episode dropping today. Hey, I want to put this in front of you. It's very rare that we would play like a 3-minute clip on the show, but this one I think demands it. This was a short time after obviously the tragedy. Renee Good shot and killed in Minneapolis. The mom that was embroiled, I mean, however you want to describe it, a horrific confrontation with ICE agents, and it's basically, it feels like it's just turned the United States upside down right now. Hundreds more ICE agents are being deployed to Minnesota. There's been subsequent, a woman who happened to be black, dragged away from the scene of a motor vehicle accident, screaming, saying, "Check my ID." They're leaving her crashed car in the middle of the road. Young man's getting tackled outside Target. They find out later that he was an American citizen, just like he said he was, before he was slammed to the ground and bloody. I mean, it's just a nightmare. Anyway, so Philadelphia's sheriff, her name is Rochelle Blal, just a 3-minute flamethrower, if you want to call that, from the podium, essentially daring ICE agents to come to Philadelphia and pull what they've pulled in Minnesota. She says if you do so, well, I'll let her say it in her own words. So we'll get to the response that this has triggered, but here she is.
Good afternoon. I'm Rochelle Blal, the sheriff for the city and county of Philadelphia. And I say her name, Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. Renee Good. This should not have happened, but we're here today. Let know that law enforcement professionals, real ones, not the fake made-up ICE, probably Trump's new army to attack citizens of the United States. Did you hear what I said? No law enforcement professional wears a mask. None. None. Those that come into our communities wearing a mask to commit crime, thank God for our district attorney, Larry Krasner, who said he's going to lock them up. And I'm saying now, we are not going to whisk you away for them to hide your identity, because when you do it there, you're getting arrested there. No whisk away for them to hide you. None of that here. None of that here. Law enforcement professionals do not shoot at moving vehicles. I'm not saying fleeing, because she wasn't fleeing. She was getting out of the way. Law enforcement professionals do not stand in front of moving vehicles invoking an action that is illegal. No, we don't. And so we stand here today with all those who stand against the made-up, fake, what you can call ICE, professional law enforcement. I don't call them none of that. I call them made-up, fake, wannabe law enforcement. Because what they do is against not only legal law, but the moral law. So I'm with the DA, and we will work with them. If any of them want to come in this city and commit a crime, you will not be able to hide. Nobody will whisk you off. You don't want this smoke, because we will bring it to you. And the fake, whatever they call them, because I can't say the name, but the criminal in the White House would not be able to keep you from going to jail. Renee Good should be here today. And to her family, we are saying law enforcement professionals are not the ones here in this city that would do that. But here's the last thing that I will say. law enforcement professionals around the country do their job. And we have been fighting for years to build that bridge between us and our communities. You have one negative nutcase that causes this problem, and now we all have to fight again to let people know law enforcement works with communities. These crimes would not be down if we didn't have communities work with us. Thank you.
All right, so that's Philadelphia Sheriff Rochelle Blal in just an absolutely remarkable statement. You don't want this smoke, she says. So ICE Director Todd Lyons appears on Fox, this just a short time ago, and offers this in response.
Dave, this is the exact type of political rhetoric that I've been saying ever since I had the opportunity to be the ICE Director, that this increased rhetoric is what's causing the issues right now. You can't pit a local law enforcement officer against a federal law enforcement officer. We are out there trying to do a lawful law enforcement mission, and this rhetoric right here is pure example of what we're facing every day. And you know, I'm not one for like big, banter or bluster, but my message to the sheriff is try it. Try arrest my folks. Let's see what happens.
Try it. Let's see what happens. That from acting ICE Director Todd Lyons. So this, it's one thing to have demonstrators, members of the public, let's say Americans, sort of like standing off or squaring off against ICE. We've seen them be shouted down in a target location, and obviously mass protests across the United States, in particular in Minneapolis, peaceful protests. It's an entirely different situation to have local law enforcement, police officers, sheriffs, stating that they'll arrest the ICE agents and then having the ICE director say, try it and see what happens. Like, this is next level.
This is, and of all the cities that I would not fuck with, Philadelphia is at the absolute top of the list. I really don't think he wants to back up what he was saying there. But, of all the people who should be appalled by the murder of Renee Good, and I think everyone should be, but law enforcement officers are at the top of the list because this is being done in their name, and this is going to sully not just their reputation with the public, but their ability to work constructively with them in the future, long after Trump is out of office, long after all of these ICE goons are out of their jobs. They will still have to work with the communities that they police in, and this is. If they are not seen to be on the side of the public and on the side of the law, it is going to do tremendous damage to that relationship. It's pretty clear that most of these interventions are not lawful. They are well beyond the scope of what they're supposed to be doing. Like when you're roughing up people at a target, that is not about immigration enforcement. That is about sort of flexing your might. And well-trained police officers who have had to go through training for years, they have standards to uphold, they have paperwork to fill out, should be appalled by these people who sign up, get a bonus, can't even apparently complete basic training. Like they've had to make the training standards lower because they can't do a few push-ups apparently, and then are out there wearing masks, roughing the public up. This is Banana Republic stuff, and the people who are going to pay the highest cost for it, other than the public, other than the people who are actually being roughed up, are other law enforcement officers. So it's good to hear them speaking out. I heard an interview with, I believe it was the Minneapolis police chief, who was saying similar things, that there was no justification for this. This was not helpful. They didn't want them there. And I think we'll probably hear more of this going forward, because, police leadership, law enforcement leadership can see where this is going, that the midterms are coming up. Trump is old. He is not going to be around forever, and they have to live in the fallout.
We've been hanging out with Max Fawcett in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Ben, in our live chat, says, anybody remember watching that Gerard Butler, Jamie Foxx movie, Law Abiding Citizen, based in Philadelphia? Says, we don't want that. Randy says, time to call out the Insurrection Act. Tracy says, on the positive side, we're getting about 28% more increase from healthcare professionals to work here, which is interesting. Is this this can't be true. Whitrium says a report just last week, come on, really? A report just last week showed that 80% of ICE officers can't read or write past a grade 9 level. That does. I'm not laughing at the situation. If that's the case,
it speaks to the quality of the recruits. These are not the best and brightest. These are the washed out and the unemployed. And I thought it was interesting. The idea of abolishing ICE has long been seen as kind of a fringe left view. Recent polling now has it in the majority. That's how well this is going for the Trump administration and for ICE, that a majority of the public now would rather see ICE completely abolished than reformed, improved, what have you. And I think that may be a litmus test for the next Democratic president, is are they willing to really wipe this thing off the map and start fresh? I would suggest that's probably table stakes at this point.
Okay. I'm looking at Jezebel.com in a feature. This is published October of 2025, so a while ago. Do ICE recruits know how to read? Asks the feature at Jezebel.com. I don't know. I'm not laughing at it. I am laughing, but there's nothing funny about the situation. We can all agree there. Hey, Max, it's very rare. Before we thank you for your time, it's pretty cool when we get an email about your interview while you're still doing the interview. And Pedro's watching. I bet he still is. And he wrote into talk@RyanJesperson.com. Says, what a great show today with Max. Hard swerve here, by the way. He says, given a continued push for shipping bitumen from Canada's west coast, what guarantee does Canada have that the loaded tankers are not hijacked by tanker pirates? What Venezuela has shown us is that tankers can be diverted under the premise of payment of debts to the United States.
I mean, I think we are in a different position than Venezuela. Venezuela was sanctioned by the Biden administration as well. There is a widespread agreement that the Maduro regime was illegitimate. It lost elections repeatedly and then just walked past them as if it didn't happen. So I don't think we're in the same situation as Venezuela. But the Trump administration has shown, and by extension, has kind of shown that Americans will be capable of things we never thought possible. And we have to reframe all of our political conversations around that basic fact. We cannot rely on them to be loyal stewards of the rule of law and international order. We have to assume that they're kind of a little nuts and go forward on that basis. And so, that I think that means thickening our borders. I think it means more military spending. And yeah, it means considering possibilities that weren't possibilities before.
And one final question from Steve. He was in our live chat. I want to give him a shout out earlier. He was wondering, with all this talk about pipeline expansion to the West Coast, you and I have touched on this before, but he says, why is nobody talking about reviving that Energy East initiative? Your eyebrows just raised big time for the podcast listeners.
I've talked about it. I was in a recent column of mine where I said that the Venezuela situation made another West Coast pipeline is a non-issue. It's not going to happen. But if we are really interested or we are really concerned about our energy security vis-a-vis the Americans, then yeah, let's revive Energy East. Make it a nation-building project. Displace the American oil and refined product imports that are coming into Quebec and Ontario. Replace it with Alberta and Saskatchewan oil. Hell, let's do a national energy program while we're at it. I mean, I think there is a case for that, but the case only exists if folks like Danielle Smith are willing to acknowledge that we can't just build pipelines in every direction and fill them, because there is not going to be sufficient demand or financial support for that. The oil and gas companies are not going to be spending $90 to $100 a barrel to add 1 million barrels of production when global oil prices are around $50 to $60. And there's 2 million barrels of Venezuelan crude lurking around the corner. They're just not going to do it. So let's be reasonable, let's be rational, and let's have a serious conversation about which pipelines we do want to support.
You can read Max's work at nationalobserver.com and I guess follow him on Blue Sky, right, Max?
Yeah, there we go. Blue Sky.
All right, buddy. We always appreciate you on the show. Thanks for doing this.
Anytime.
All right. Real talkers, let me know what you think about what you heard from Max. Many of you are already. So, Johnny, I just did a quick search, and this is an interesting one. Rawstory.com. They're referencing reporting from Reuters, which to me provides some legitimacy here. But I want to dig into this. Let's dig into this. I'll just close that Play Alberta pop-up for now, before we remind you later about playalberta.ca. Ice shooting, writes Daniel Hampton, on the 8th of January comes after bombshell probe finds new recruits, quote, can barely read or write. This is at rawstory.com. I'm reading this out loud for the first time to you guys, so we'll read it together. Deadly shooting in Minneapolis at the hands of a federal immigration officer comes weeks after a bombshell report on President Trump's desperate drive to rush 10,000 deportation officers onto the payroll by the end of the year, 2025. A Daily Mail report found that the admin's $50,000 signing bonus. That's a huge deal, obviously, especially people that are unemployed. Like a $50,000 signing bonus has attracted, says the report, droves of unqualified recruits, high school grads who can barely read or write, overweight candidates with doctor's notes saying they're unfit, and even applicants with pending criminal charges. The report exposed how Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, took a blowtorch to its hiring standards, with one DHS official blasting, quote, we have people failing open book tests. We have folks that can barely read or write English. Officials sent recruits to a Georgia training center before drug test results came back, later discovering some tested positive. I mean, that's probably pretty normal for workforce stuff. At the academy, some recruits showed up with tattoos tied to gangs and white supremacists. One bailed for a court date on a gun charge. One arrested for exploding at a bus driver. Someone's going to hashtag not all ICE. Sex harassment accusations emerged. This report pouring cold water on ICE claims that over 85% of its agents were experienced officers that were already trained. They allege that background checks aren't happening until after people start work. HR is rubber stamping applicants. Training slashed from 16 weeks to 6. Sit-ups eliminated. That was what Max talked about because recruits couldn't handle them. Okay. Well, yeah, anyway, brutal. The whole situation is brutal, to say the least. Let us know what you think to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Hey, we want to chat about something with you in just a second, but before we do, I want to remind you, we just mentioned Play Alberta. You know, people are winning every single day at playalberta.ca or by way of the Play Alberta app. Plus, we're 2 days away from our next episode of Alberta Wins, presented by our friends at Play Alberta. Check them out online, or you can check out the app today. You know that somebody in Sturgeon County just scored $100,000 on Cash Machine. There's literally hundreds of popular casino games to choose from, some of them with jackpots worth millions. And also, all the revenue stays right here in Alberta. So with a major casino winner every hour, you can download the app today to get started with casino, sports, and lottery all in one app. You got to be 18 or over to play. And when you gamble, please do use your game sense. And remember, thanks to our friends at Play Alberta, it's Real Talk Night. It's going to be the 21st of March. Edmonton Oilers hosting the Tampa Bay Lightning, and we've got the Play Alberta Suite for Real Talk VIPs. You can qualify to win 2 tickets into the suite with us on the 21st of March by submitting an Alberta Wins story, a story in your community or one that you've noticed even on the international stage. Alberta or Albertans making a big impact. That's what we love to do, celebrate our home province. Alberta Wins presented every Thursday here on Real Talk, courtesy of playalberta.ca. Absolutely loved popping into the Friesen Brothers in Hinton just a few days ago on our way out to Jasper National Park. Always love to pop in and see how our different Friesen Brothers locations are doing. That includes Fort Saskatchewan, Stony Plain, Rabbit Hill, Edmonton, Glenora, Hinton. Our family's all over the map when it comes to Friesen Brothers. The one thing holds true, my friends, in every single one of them, and that is that their sandwiches are absolutely killer. I picked up a turkey sandwich on a cheese bun, and then one of their beautiful chicken sourdough sandwiches just blew my mind. And $8 a pop, too. You can't do any better than that for absolutely fresh. The bread's baked there by their legendary Friesen Brothers bakers. Nothing touches Friesen Brothers sourdough. You know that. You'll find them in 16 different Alberta locations and online at friesen.com. We're going to be at Comedy Night in support of UCAN Youth Services coming up in March, and we invite you to join us there. So much fun, and this is an annual tradition for UCAN in support, of course, of a great cause, this charitable organization, a nonprofit that helps young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. Get your tickets for a UCAN Comedy Night today by visiting their website, ucan.ca. They run March 9th through the 11th, and then again March 16th through the 18th. We did it on St. Patrick's Day last year. It was so good. Real Talk's going to get a table at a couple of these nights. And I encourage you to do the same thing, or just pick up a couple of tickets, whatever you like. You're going to have some laughs, and you're going to support UCAN. Again, that's ucan.ca. And a reminder from our friends at North Road Investment Council. They're coming up on the show in a little while, by the way. We've got some great New Year's content for you to make sure that you're focused where you need to be to ensure your families and your businesses' long-term success. North Road Investment Council does exactly that, working with discerning families, discerning businesses, of course, that want to make sure that they are well positioned for unexpected challenges. With North Road Investment Council, they're building customized passive portfolios that capture index returns, but with a really strong focus on tax management and matching your values and preferences. If you're at an earlier stage of building your wealth, the team at North Road can also work with you on an hourly basis, where you can have a professional review your current investment strategy, your insurance needs, as well as develop a customized financial plan. You can learn more about what makes them different. Connect with Marshall, Carey, and the team by visiting northroadic.com. Awesome to welcome some new Real Talk YouTube channel members, some subscribers through the show. We saw Deanna joining at the Real Talker level. Sure appreciate that. Johnny, I haven't even told you about this yet, but we might as well spring it on Real Talkers that have made it to this point in the episode. We'll let you know starting with our next episode of the show. That'll be Wednesday. We're going to tell you how, if you're a Patreon supporter of Real Talk, or if you're a YouTube channel subscriber at any of the levels, Real Talker, Real Deal, or Real VIP, you can qualify to win a pair of tickets to go see Death of a Salesman at the Citadel Theater. So that's going to be awesome. We'll have details on that to come. And I also wanted to shout out Goramat, who was reminding everybody to go ahead and like our live stream, or like it if you're checking out the YouTube episode later in the day or anytime. It helps us make sure that our content's reaching more people, and we truly appreciate that. I'm having a bit of a time getting used to seeing this new view of you through the producer's station camera, your nice wide-angle lens without our holiday decor. I'm going to be honest with you. We made the decision to take down Christmas following our show yesterday, and I'm feeling like it was a little too early. I saw some people encouraging us to do so in the live chat, but I got to be honest, I missed the glitter, buddy.
No, I think it was time. Yeah.
Someone said, I saw someone yesterday say, guys, the holidays are over. The holiday season is over. Let's get back on track. I'm curious to know where you guys are at in taking down Christmas. Our home Christmas tree is still up without apology. We're going to leave it up for a little while longer. You know, every time that we're chatting about Christmas or the holidays, it does remind us that our Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic is looming. And we just wanted to make sure that this was on your radar, Real Talkers. Check this out. This is the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic that goes down in St. Albert. This year it's going to be the 31st of January at Larry Alexiak Field. The city of St. Albert just does an incredible job rolling out the red carpet. They flood the entire field for us as 24 teams compete for the Lozzie Cup, the Tim Losnick Memorial Trophy. All the proceeds go to charity. This is one of my favorite days of the entire year, as we get a chance to meet not just pond hockey enthusiasts, but just true beauties that are out there in support of kids sport and uncles and aunts at large. You just saw Craig Strain there on the screen if you're watching this on YouTube. He's the originator. He's the founder of this pond hockey tournament, which has run coming up on 15 years, and we're so proud to partner with them here at Real Talk. They've made just an incredible impact in their community. Sometimes, I mean, the video you're seeing here, it was minus 28, and it was just absolutely unforgiving, and we've also had a Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic that was plus 3 degrees and just totally perfect. If anything, it was a little too warm for the ice. But all of it is just something that'll just fill your heart like you wouldn't believe. We have all skill levels that participate in this, guys, and so don't be intimidated. And if you're a real ringer and you have a bunch of ringers, don't hesitate to sign up either, because we do see some amazing competition out there. All of it for fun, though, of course, and in support of a great cause. You can register today by checking out the events link at ryanjesperson.com. Just look for pond hockey, and we encourage you to sign up as soon as you can. Registration's at about 50% right now. Guys, I'm going to be honest with you. Registration's been a little slower this year than it has in past, but every year it sells out. And so we know that a lot of you are sitting there going, oh yeah, gosh, I got to sign up. Gosh, I got to make sure I get my team to sign up. Do it today so we can make sure that we get that all filled up. 24 teams, up to 6 skaters per team. It's $600 a team with all of the proceeds going to charity. Our friends at Molson do an amazing job presenting this. We'll have cold Molson on site. The beers will be proudly presented by our friends at Central Social Hall in St. Albert. Plus, our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton, making sure that we got lots of burgers there. We'll have, of course, the bonfires going all through the day. And it just really, truly is something special. You can check out again, RyanJesperson.com. Click on the events link to sign up for the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic that's coming up on the 31st of January out in St. Albert. We also wanted to let you know as we wrap today's show, a story that may or may not be on your radar. Photojournalist Amber Bracken, do you remember this? She was out covering the Wet'suwet'en protests on the West Coast quite some time ago now. Looking back on it, she was arrested. A very high-profile situation. Her employer has alleged that Amber and the outlet's constitutional rights were violated, and they're suing the RCMP in court. She's going to be with us on the next episode of the show. We'll talk to you then.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton, member emerita Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out RyanJesperson.com.